Hi there. My name is Hal. I just finished up my undergraduate degree at Stanford, where I majored in English, mainly because they did not have a program where I could major in improv. But if they had, that's what I would have done, and I managed to make most of my classes somehow about improv. That was my main focus. And what Stanford does have is a unique place for narrative improv. A lot of people I don't think know this, but the Bay Area is kind of one of the centers of narrative improv of the world, partly because Bay Area Theater Sports was one of the earliest theaters to start doing it that I found any documentation of. They were doing it like hour-long shows in 1989. So I've been doing a lot of research on improv history and trying to figure out uh, how it is that this whole narrative improv came about. For those of you who don't know, that's like the type of improvisation where you're putting on some sort of often hour-long show that tells one continuous story. And particularly, what I was interested in is dramatic improv and how possible it is to put on dramatic shows that were not comedic. Um, a lot of people I found in the improv world are a little skeptical of dramatic improv. They've seen it and they've seen it in a way where it wasn't done well. And what I kind of like to say is picture your favorite dramatic play. And now imagine if you had to see the same play, but you took away the set, you took away the costumes, you took away the props and the lighting and all of the stage managing and all of that sort of energy. And then you also took away most of the practice time. So it was just practice over a tiny period of time. And then you took away you made it so that the cast was all people who mainly had experience doing comedies. And then you were like, go put on this dramatic play. It might not go so well. Um, and especially if that play did not have a script. But I was really wondering, is the script the limiting factor there? Could you, if you gave it all the other resources that are given to dramatic theater, put on something that really worked without a script? Um, and I spent my senior year trying to tackle this problem by looking historically at what had been done and trying to combine and apply all those techniques to put on a 90-minute stage play that had all of those things that I just listed before. And I'm just going to try to rapid fire walk you through how we tackled each of these issues. So, like, set. First of all, the idea we came up with, the big breakthrough, was we can build our set on the spot. And it just needs to be those like theater blocks, and we need a lot of them. And we kind of instantly started doing research, and there is another group in the Bay Area. Actually, one of our instructors is in that group that does a show called The Naked Stage, where they build their whole set. Um, so we were tracking down a lot of large black boxes um, and costumes. One of the earliest narrative improv shows that was out there in Chicago was called Cast on a Hot Tin Roof. They did Tennessee Williams plays improvised, and they would come out in their underclothes at the beginning of the show, and then based on suggestion from the audience, they would get dressed. Now, my cast was not interested in being in our underclothes in front of a large audience, but we noticed all of our stage blocks are black. Everyone was coming out wearing black. So that was sort of the base coat of everything. And then everything that we are going to layer on was going to be white. All of the props, all of the costumes, as a kind of unifying force. So you would go either backstage in between scenes as your character was getting developed, you'd start adding costume pieces, or your costume pieces would be brought out to you by our improvised crew. And I'll get to them in a moment. But I want to talk props, because how could you have a prop available for every single thing that you might need? And that's sort of why improv has historically revolved around mime. And our first breakthrough was the idea of abstract props. Things like a shape, like a cylinder, can be a cup, but it can also be like, a barbell or a telescope. And we were like, okay, we want to construct as many of these things as we can and have them be kind of ghostly. And suddenly there was also a breakthrough of things like string or rope uh, that could start to take on symbolic meanings as well, and frames. So that became a very fun thing to play with during the show of like, can you add in symbolic meanings to these objects? And if we were truly missing something, we could mime it. But the physical improvisers, who are the crew, who are responsible for building the set, bringing out props and costumes, and also doing some narration, they were equipped to physically be props. So they would have on a black cloak while they're moving around everything. But underneath that cloak, they would have a bright white morph suit. So they could remove the quote quickly and have their whole body turn into a prop, or they could just extend their arm and have their hands, suddenly be the running water or a bright light flashing at you. Um, so that was a big innovation. And then the light board, a lot of people have done improvised light boards. Ours was a little more complicated in that it had a spotlight that would sort of pivot around, and our lighting improviser would desperately try to keep up with people. And for the soundboard, one of our musical improvisers programmed this thing that had like 2,000 sounds that you could search. So if there was a cat, you would just search cat, and then suddenly a meow would start coming in. And then we also had a band of musicians who were all playing together in an improvised style. And depending on the night, it would range from one musician to like four musicians with a bunch of different instruments. That was really fun. And the final piece was practice, because normal plays practice a huge amount of time. And uh, from my experience, most improv groups assume that they can do what they're doing with a much smaller degree of practice. And we're like, no, we need to be coming in every day, the same way that a play would, for long hours and spending large amounts of time doing it. One of the big artistic goals of our project was to have the shows be dramatically different every night. So, one night might be a comedy, one night be a drama, one night might just be a story told in chronological order, the other one might be super abstract. And we wanted to know nothing in advance. We didn't take a suggestion from the audience. We didn't even fully tell the audience that it was improvised. And that was a very challenging part of the show. It was different on each of the nights. That was definitely achieved. The two nights that I found to be the most successful were the second night was this very dramatic abstract piece, and the fourth night was a comedy in a sort of normal improv style. So that was a real joy. But I wanted to share this experimentation with all of you. You can watch if you want to see the full shows. They're on YouTube, on the YouTube channel Muprov Musings. That's also a podcast where we're going to be kind of explaining more of this. And I would love to answer any questions and also hear if anyone else has been trying to develop ways of adding the tools of the theater to improv. Because at the end of our show, we had like 15 people improvising at once, and maybe 5 of them were the official cast. So it really was broadening who got to improv and what it means to improv. Like maybe in the future you could have people building props during the show out of clay, or just widening what counts as improvising, and you don't have to necessarily be a performer in the usual sense. So that was really exciting. Anyway, nice to meet you all. That's the end of my 8 minutes, but that was a speed run of the project that we called A New Play.